Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece, episode 604 to 606. Get to Building R, the Pirate Alliance's great advance. Toshigi's tears, G5's desperate breakthrough plan, and the treacherous Vice Admiral, Demon Bamboo, Vergo. In these episodes. So now we're just going to let the gas into the building. And Toshigi, I really felt bad for her. You know, I've been sort of lukewarm on her these past couple times, but she's trying. And Vergo, dude, what is your deal, though? Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Florian for commissioning this episode. Florian is here in the chat because I had to put off my recording by a day because I fucked up and only watched 2 of the 3 episodes I was meant to. But it worked out so that Florian was able to be here because he couldn't come yesterday. So I guess all's well that ends well. So when I started my recording yesterday, I began with a recap of sort of what I had been expecting versus what we were getting. And since I got sort of wrapped up in that, I'm going to go ahead and start with that again I thought that having the gas outside is actually kind of a fun narrative device because what it does is makes it so that you can't just run outside willy-nilly. The whole situation and fight has to be kept in so that we don't expose ourselves to this, and that means that we're limiting a lot, which is always a good thing. If you're trying to increase tension in any situation in like a story, making it so that certain things are more difficult because they have stronger parameters that you can't break, that's always going to, just adding boundaries to anything is going to make them more difficult. But because of that, it forces you as a writer or even as a character in the story to be a little bit more creative with what you choose to do. So I thought that what we were doing was just having this gas outside so that it would be a lot more tricky since we couldn't just exit the building whenever we wanted. And instead, we're getting this whole other thing where we are letting the gas inside and creating a threat on the interior as well. And that is totally unexpected. I knew that there was the potential for the gas to get inside because when our friends finally made it in, they busted a hole in the wall, right? So I really figured that was going to be maybe some of it, was that part of the wall being broken was going to allow gas to chase our people a certain distance. But the idea of like Cesar Clown himself being like, no, let's let it in, like purposely just saying that this is how we're going to approach things next, didn't occur to me. And what I really like about it, it's not just that Caesar is like, oh yeah, let's open this up to the gas because I want to kill my enemies because they are my enemies. It's, let me open this up to kill my enemies because I'm trying to make a fucking sale here. And I said that we were going to have a field of corpses, and then the smoke clears and there's nobody out there. And that does not make me look good at all. So now I'm embarrassed and I have to fix the mistake. And I find that to be a really kind of hilarious motivation, that he is literally just trying to create an adequate sales pitch brochure or, short video, and is so pissed at the fact that the thing he thought he was accomplishing now he looks like a fucking joke, you know? Now, life comes at you fast, Caesar. Sometimes you just, sometimes you just fuck up, my guy. And it's kind of funny because, like, he seems to really think that nobody is going to take him seriously because there aren't these piles of corpses. And, perhaps he's correct, but I also felt like there weren't tons of people out there, but it's not like there was nobody. And those people are turned into stone. So I feel like what he's trying to show them his item does, I feel like he succeeded in showing that. So it's just that the effect isn't quite as utterly dramatic as he was thinking it would be. But I don't feel like he needs to be reacting this way. I don't know. It's not really like they're not. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but to me, they're looking to see what your weapon can do, and they saw that. Whether or not you, as an attacker, is super competent isn't really the thing that they are concerned with, right? I didn't think. So even if you didn't manage to kill all of these people, that's not a fault of the product. That's a fault of your planning, which is a different thing. But he's sort of packaging it all as one item, which I guess sort of makes sense if you're trying to sort of suggest to people that, like, I am the person to come to if you want to get things done. And it looks like maybe he isn't, but I was under the impression he's just going to sell this to somebody and he won't be the one operating the thing. He's just going to be the one that's selling it, and they are going to be responsible for creating whatever attack, you know. But it doesn't really matter. This is his motivation, and his ego is clearly very tied up in this whole thing. Oh my God, Florian. His name is Clown. Of course, he looks like a joke. I walked right into that one. You're fired, sir. Get out. Um, I also want to mention that when we have that, like, slow pan around the whole island with the like fog of gas, it's a pretty prolonged, drawn out pan. And normally that sort of thing can kind of irritate me. But the soundtrack during that pan is so lovely that I was like, no, make it twice as long. It's a sort of like tinkling. It's meant to be kind of spooky, right? The music. And what it made me think of was the kinds of, like, Halloween themed music that people use on TikTok. I, do resin art and polymer clay stuff. So I follow a lot of artists who will make seasonal items, and they will put whatever appropriate music over. And I've been running across a lot of, like, spooky, chimey, bing, ba-ding, bing, 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 kind of like, and this, I was like, is this song on TikTok? Because this would suit really well for that sort of thing. I don't know if it's been used on the show before, but if it has been, it's not super frequent. The only other time that I could see this music working out is, like, in Killer Bark, maybe, because that was so clearly meant to be a sort of, horror movie vibe. But otherwise, this is not something that I remember being used on the show very much. And I just really, really liked it. Um, so anyway, the guys who are in the building where they broke through the wall, those dudes are extremely pissed off at the fact that our friends busted in and put all of these guys in danger along with themselves. And I really couldn't help but laugh. Eventually, they actually say this in the dialogue, but our friends are the ones who broke the wall. And then when all of the Marines are yelling at them and trying to patch the hole, our guys don't help at all. It's like they're puzzled at why everybody's freaking out, really. And I couldn't help but laugh because y'all are, and this is like an ongoing theme in this section, which I did find actually increasingly funny. But there's just a sense of them really not wanting to bother themselves. And the conversation that they have with Brownbeard later, because eventually, like Brownbeard at first, when they are running, and they're saying, like, thank you so much for your help, Brownbeard is really like, oh, don't mention it, glad to be able to help. But then you get into like the third episode of the three of these, and he's like, guys, this is getting pretty heavy. You think any of you want to jump down and maybe like run on your own? And we get a joke that is just, I think it's all the funnier because it's coming from Zorro. But Zorro is like, hey man, I'm really sorry, but we have our reasons for not running. And he says, well, they better be good ones. And Zorro says, oh, they're very good ones. And then there's this long pause, and he just goes, we've been running all day, and now we don't want to anymore. Oh my God, you guys, that really hit for me because I have just started like this training thing, this like personal training thing. And yeah, that fatigue is real. That just fucking got me really, really bad. I'm jumping all over the place here a little bit. I'm sorry about that, but like just, touching on the things that I was the most tickled by in this episode. Um, so oh my God, I forgot about how after the apparently gas has done its thing, right before Caesar has realized that the corpses out there are not what he was expecting, he goes on because I I have to assume it's the same in the sub because this is something that it doesn't seem like the translation really changes. But you know how every character who's like a big villain has his own weird kind of vocal tick, and his is that he laughs like I think it's an R sound. I may be doing it. Maybe it's an L sound, but he normally he does like a little bit of that, and then we move on. And in this section, he just laughs over and over and over. And I all I could wonder was whether the voice actor started to be like, oh my God, this is going on forever. Like I am I'm sure that when you are this kind of voice actor, there are certain things that you find tedious to do. One of them, I'm assuming, is screaming in pain, right? Because that probably can really wreck your voice, your throat. Screaming does a number on your throat. But are there things that aren't actually like painful or damaging that voice actors are just like, oh God, now I gotta do this, you know? Is there a particular character that the voice actors were like, I hated doing this guy. This sucked. Like, it was really hard. I never really seemed to get the hang of it. And I would love to ask them about their experience with all these characters because they are all doing really different things. And there has got to be, some moments here and there where they're just like, this show is going to be the death of me. But anyway, I also love the fact that Brooke is able to like go out into the outside using his like ghosty spirit power. What did we call that? I know that they tend to have like names for things, um, for the abilities that our characters use. And it's probably been said, but I just don't recall. But you know how he can sort of project his spirit out and it just waves it like still attached by one end to his body. Um, but yeah, since it's not his actual, well, even if it were his body, I'm assuming his body wouldn't get hurt either because he's just a skeleton. But I may be wrong because people get turned to stone, and it looked like when we did that slow pan, all the buildings, like inanimate objects, also got turned to stone. It doesn't seem like you have to be alive for it to affect you, which is pretty interesting actually, that we are like not just making it so that our friends can be affected by something, but also that the inanimate objects out there that you might use, even if you're in a hazmat suit and you're like living in a building that you are safe because you're in this suit. I'm assuming like the suit would be turned to stone as well. So there's no real escape no matter what. Just being out in it's going to be too dangerous, right? Um so yeah, maybe Brooke can't actually leave. But anyway, he uses this to go and see what's going on out there. When they ask him, how does it look? He says bleak and ravaged, like something from a nightmare. To think what would have happened to us if we hadn't plugged the hole. And he says it's truly terrifying. And the Marines are looking at him going, "You're terrifying." Um, so this is when Zorro says, good. There's nothing good about this, and you didn't even help us plug up the hole. You guys have pissed us off one too many times. Play nice, Straw Hats, or we'll blow your heads off. You too, Brown Beard. So yeah, they're cornered in this place with all these Marines. I love the different reactions. And like, Usopp is like, well, there's nowhere to go. Zoro is like, all right, now we're gonna fucking get down to it. Even the fucking dragon is over here like grinning a little bit. You guys, we find out later that this dragon has been sedated. Obviously, not to the degree that he is rendered unconscious, but he has been given the equivalent of like a really strong Prozac, is the energy that I'm getting. And so eventually when we have our the moment when he comes back to himself at full energy, this dude is not as cooperative as he seemed at first. I thought that this dragon was like a personal friend of Cesar Clown. Like, I know that sounds idiotic to say it that way, but I really do. I'm being honest with you guys that basically my interpretation was that Cesar Clown raised this dragon from a baby, and the dragon was loyal to Caesar as a pet would be. And finding out that, like, no, he just sedated this dragon to pull that cart. And then the dragon was meant to just, I guess, die. The dragon wasn't supposed to come back into the building, right? So, you guys, there's some moments. You ever have this where you're like about to say something and you're like, that's a fucked up thing to say. But I have to be real with y'all. I know that Caesar Clown is out here trying to kill all of these Marines, our Straw Hat friends. He's killing like all the wildlife on the island, the fish, the birds. But realizing that he was just about to let that poor dragon die, that's just got me in my feelings a little bit. Y'all know I have just such a weak spot for the creatures in this show. And even though the dragon is like meant to be kind of an antagonist, but he's so adorable. And like Nami says that herself later. She's like, but I think he's kind of cute though. And he gets all like blushy and like, oh shucks. And I was like, see, yes, that is adorable. I'm kind of hoping that maybe he'll, because of what Nami said, sort of be saying he'll be their friend. I feel like that's too strong, but I'm sort of wondering if maybe he'll go a little easy on them due to that. I don't know, y'all. I'm probably just like getting a little bit overexcited about it. It's just any time that we have a creature that is potentially something that our friends can get some help from, and that it's a creature that could be saved from a terrible fate. I want a team up. I want our friends to like, and I don't really know what this could even it never works long term. They're always huge animals and they can't really like follow our friends places. So he would stay on this island anyway. Like, what am I wanting, you know? Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm getting off track again. But yeah, so um everybody is starting to get ready to throw down with these Marines. I love that Brownbeard's reaction is just, "Oh, they heard of me." That's like he's so proud of himself. Um so Law is the one who chimes in. He's over here talking to Smoker. And he says, "You're not going to interfere with me or Straw Hat, right? Like his crew and me, separate thing." And Smoker says, "Okay." Because Law and Luffy are up in the sort of rafters. There's like these walkways. So Nami, who is down there next to Sanji, is yelling, "Please switch us back, Law." Of course, Sanji tries to say not to do that. But Law goes ahead, switches them back, and Nami realizes that she isn't wearing what she had been wearing. So her assumption, understandably, is that Sanji took off all her clothes at some point. Now, he did take off some of her clothes, but it was not what it looks like. I can understand her feeling that way. Sanji, once he goes back into his own body after the beatings that she's been through, he is in some pain and is like, "Wait, what the hell happened to me? All my entire body hurts." And way more than one punch from her should have been. And Usopp says that was Caesar. He beat Nami pretty badly, actually. And Sanji starts crying and says, "I'm so glad he hurt my body and not hers." And Usopp says, "You truly are a prince among men," and starts crying. Y'all, this is one of those things that's like, when I was younger and more foolish, I would have taken this as sort of chivalry. And now I can see it for what it is. He wants Nami's body for his own reasons, to remain pretty and unharmed. This is not altruism. This is not him actually caring about her as a person, really, you know? Um, so this is when Law tells everybody, "I know that you guys want to get the fuck out of here. And we are like trapped in this building, but there is a way out. A passage that leads out to the sea and is completely enclosed." And he says that they're currently in building A, that B is the next section with the like main laboratory, and that's the biggest. And then after that, you want to go to the central part of the laboratory where you'll find building R. Y'all, I was so confused why we're jumping from A, B to R. When you see the map, there is a building C and D, but they're flanking R. And I was like, why name these after the alphabet and like in order if we're just going to immediately do away with that convention and jump to R? But he says there's a building marked R66, and that is the entrance to the passage that leads to the sea. I'd rather not massacre everybody here. So here's the deal. You have 2 hours to find your way out. And if not, I can't guarantee your safety. And he just walks away. Of course, the Marines are just like, "What the fuck? You're just leaving us here?" But honestly, I kind of understand just being like, "Dudes, figure it out. I told you what you need to know." And Law says, "I have to go do what I have to do." And he leaves Luffy and Robin. And Luffy asks Robin to do him a favor. By the end of this trio of episodes, she has completed the mission he sends her on. But we don't get to find out what that actually is. So Smoker is yelling down at the men, like, guys, I know that you want to just get out of here, but there are a bunch of kids that have been kidnapped, and before we can leave, we have to find them and get all of the kids together, head for the place that Law just mentioned. We'll steal a ship, and then we will get the fuck out of here. And all of these men are like, "Bet, absolutely." Um, So eventually, Smoker goes off on his own because he wants to deal with Virgo. And it's a little bit of a like moment between him and Tashigi because Tashigi, understandably, feels like, dude, you have to stay with us. Like, this is, we're all in this together, and the situation is, we are dealing with a guy who has a lot of abilities and he's got a lot of backing. Not just, other people don't know what a traitor he is. What Smoker says, and I thought this was interesting, he says basically, I want to get this motherfucker because I know that they are not going to punish him the way he needs. Like, he's too high ranking to be held to responsibility adequately. And it sort of, it caught me off guard a little bit because I have imagined Smoker as being very much like the by the books guy. He just seems to really want to follow rules. And so the fact that he admits out loud that the law isn't going to do enough when it comes to this guy, I didn't see that coming. It just felt like a confession of a lack of faith in the law that I hadn't really seen from him before. So I fully endorse his attempt to like take things into his own hands, really, because I think that's just facing facts about the way the government works, you know. But he is working for the Marines. So the fact that he seems to have so little faith in what they do and how they handle criminals of this magnitude, that's not is this new, I guess, is my main question. Like, is this a change in his character, or has he always kind of been this guy and I just haven't really seen it because he's always been up against actual pirates and so he didn't have to worry about the law being unequal? I'm not sure, we haven't spent that much time with Smoker, really, and there's just been a big gap in there as well. So, yeah, he takes off, leaves Tashigi in charge. And I'm going to kind of jump ahead a little bit here, but eventually, when the gas gets let in, Tashigi's men are very worried for her safety. And she is like trying to rescue everybody, of course. And her men basically go and grip her up and carry her out of harm's way as the gas continues to, slide in. And a bunch of her men do get caught up in it and they get turned to stone. And she is really upset, understandably. And she's feeling a bit of a way about the fact that these dudes all like low key ignored her orders. And as much as I understand, because they're all like, kind of cheering for themselves, like, yay, we saved our captain. And as much as I believe that that is their intent here, I'm not trying to say that they're like pretending to have a different motive than they do. But I'm curious what y'all think. I just don't feel like they would have done this to Smoker. I think that the suggestion is meant to be that like, oh, the guys care about her so much. But the fact that they just ignore a direct order from her is hitting me a different way. It just feels like they're behaving as if they know better than her in a way that I don't think they would have acted if she were a man. That's basically where I'm coming down on this, is that like I'm supposed to sort of see what they did as being noble and heroic, And instead, I'm kind of irritated because I'm like, she gets to make a sacrifice if she thinks that's the thing she needs to do. She has been put in charge, and there have been many people in charge who have made choices that I don't think are necessarily the best. And their men do it because they are ordered to and they are meant to be loyal and they obey without question. And I just don't really know about the depiction of this here. It just feels to me like I am supposed to be pleased with their behavior and recognize that she was going to do something stupid and that they stopped her from it. And while I think ultimately that is actually correct, I just can't help but imagine how this would have gone if Smoker had insisted on going back. I don't see his men picking Smoker up and carrying him out of there while he yells at them not to do this, you know? So anyway, I just have just kind of a vibe about that. Maybe I'm wrong. Oh, Florian's in the chat. Florian says he also ran after Luffy into the Grand Line, even though the Marines said this is not his area. Oh, I don't remember that, but okay. Also, he let Luffy get away in Alabasta one time, so yeah, he is not always by the books. He let Luffy get away in Alabasta. Florian, I gotta be honest, I'm not remembering. I believe you. I definitely believe you. But I'm so it's been so long that those those instances I feel like I should remember and I don't. But okay, I appreciate you giving me some information to kind of support what he's doing right now. So this is not new behavior. All right, I appreciate it. So, all right. This Luffy is ready to get into this fight with Caesar. He says that he's going to kidnap Caesar, which I'm very interested in what exactly he is planning to do. Uh and this is when we get the moment of Caesar looking outside and realizing that the corpses aren't out there. And he is really pleased with himself until the smoke clears. And I love the expression that he gets on his face. There's something like, because he has that very wide mouth but a narrow face, he really looks like Mick Jagger sometimes. And especially when he frowns and is sort of like, wait, I don't understand what's going on. Um, so this is when Vergo starts chiming in. I don't remember if I mentioned in the last section, but I'm gonna now. Vergo has a spoon stuck to his face that I guess is from when he was like drinking that coffee. And eventually, when we get flashbacks with him and Tashigi, he's got something stuck to his face in all of her flashbacks. It seems like it's usually a lollipop or something. Um, the fact that this is like his thing, that he just has stuff stuck to his face, is so weird. Like, I don't even know what to do with this. It's not like, okay, so first of all, it's such a silly, goofy thing to a character who is otherwise so tough. And I know that that's on purpose, but it does make me giggle. And then there's also, he later on is like, that's strange. I can't seem to find my sword. And, oh, what is her name? Monet. You guys, when he's like, I can't find my sword, I didn't think anything of it. I was just like, oh, where's his sword then? Did somebody steal it? Like, that was my first thought, was maybe somebody took it off him. And then Monet has to say, that's because you're not a swordsman. And he says, oh, that's right. Well, anyway, what is this? What are we doing? Oh my God, it's so goofy. Y'all, I just, this is so silly. It's so silly. What is this? Just random stuff stuck to his face and then literally like forgetting who he is as a person intermittently. What I'm waiting for is to see whether or not this is his downfall? You know what I'm saying? Like, is it going to turn out that he fucks up on something because he is so absent-minded? I'm saying absent-minded because it's the best I can do in terms of describing this, but it feels like that word is not adequate. His like it's giving dementia. It's giving like low level forgetting who I am kind of Alzheimer's-y dementia. And I am extremely curious whether this is going to be anything or not, because it's not always. We run into characters with bizarre behaviors like this all the time in this series, right? And it'll often just be sort of played for a laugh in the moment, which is, well, that's fine. But a lot of times these sorts of things are much more like a side villain. And there's something about Virgo that's making me think he's going to graduate to main villain. And I may not be correct about that. You know, who knows? But I feel like this stuff about him is so bizarre that I kind of want it to matter more. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I just was flabbergasted by this. And I guess I talked about Tashigi mostly already. I'm just going to wrap up on her whole thing because her flashbacks are, it's sort of funny, you guys. It to me really looked like this bitch was into him. Like, I feel like she had a crush on Virgo. Now, I may be wrong. There have also been times where it sort of felt like Tashigi was into Smoker way back, but I just don't feel that way anymore. But I really, really, the vibe in the scene where some woman's house has been blown up and they are trying to not take any responsibility for it. The Marines that she's speaking with, who are the same Marines that are like in the scene in the present. So it's definitely meant to convey to us that, like, yeah, we just, you know, we go back a long way, all of us. I don't know if we're supposed to have an inkling as to why her home was blown up, because the energy that I get is they actually did have something to do with it and they're acting like they don't know what happened here. So when Virgo shows up and is like, we'll make it right for you, he is putting on a front for the sake of Tashigi standing right there. But actually, we all, like the other people here, are aware how this happened, that it probably is our fault and is our responsibility to fix, and that we were just like pretending to have no idea because we didn't want to bother. And he is coming into the scene to sort of correct the fact that they aren't handling the PR aspect of this very well. It's one thing that we're responsible for it. It's another thing to be as visibly uncaring as you guys are being, and we can't have that. And I am not sure whether or not I'm reading that correctly. It just felt like the other Marines that we saw in the same area where these kids were disappearing were obviously like corrupt assholes. So I'm sort of putting it as these dudes being corrupt as well. But based on how genuinely shocked they seem to be when Virgo turns a corner and is like, you know, attacking them in that hallway later on, I maybe it still makes sense, because a part of me was like, would they be that surprised? But yeah, I think they would, because it's one thing to know somebody is corrupt and they're corrupt on your side. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is a different thing now that we're dealing with if this guy is attacking our own people and also doing it openly in front of everyone. So now that's changing the game up. But it did make me sort of feel like Tashigi has been putting herself out there, like was about to sacrifice herself to save these dudes before, who potentially had been doing kind of shitty things with Virgo and she was not aware of it, which is very sad to think about, that she kind of thought she knew the quality of man she was working with and was perhaps just being downright lied to. And that just makes me a little sad to think about because Tashigi is so committed and so like earnest and would put herself out on the line for her men, and to know that like they maybe were pulling some shit that she wasn't aware of, that is just really really sad. I It's weird though because then they go back and they like carry her off and rescue her. So it's not like they don't give a shit about her at all. It's just that the relationship seems to not be what everybody involved thinks it is. I don't know. Um but yeah, so the flashback where Virgo is insisting like we're going to fix the house for you, ma'am. She gives him a look like she is just very attracted to him in that moment, which I understand. Anytime a dude is like I'm going to take responsibility and I'm going to go the extra mile to make sure that this thing goes correctly and justice is done, of course that's attractive. I am not mad at her for that. Um However, then we have her in his office, and she's asking him about whether he has looked into these other disappearances of these children. And he says, yes, I have. It was an accident. They were lost at sea. It's difficult for parents to deal with their children's deaths. And so thinking that they have been abducted is an easy way for them to pretend that there's still a chance for their child to be alive. You'll understand that when you are eventually a mother, which I just resented the hell out of. Anytime that it's just presumed that a woman is eventually going to have children, because that's just what women do, I always have a bit of a fucking like reaction to that, because as a woman who has no intention of children, I don't like it. And Tashigi, to me, does not seem like she's somebody who wants kids. She seems like somebody who's going to fight until the day she drops. But this like is the one time where it seems like she's sort of questioning whether or not everything is as it seems. And she it seems like in the moment she just sort of disregards it, right? She's just sort of like, all right, well, I thought I knew. And she pushes a little by just saying like, oh, so that's all there is to it. And he says, yes, that's all there is to it. And kind of turns and looks at her in a like, well, sort of way. And I really, it seems like now that she is seeing the way he's behaving, she's starting to put two and two together and just realize, like, oh, that's all the kids that we saw here. And he knew full well what was going on and just the extent of his perfidy, I guess. Um, and these dudes are like, the dragon had been following them and attacking them because the dragon's sedatives had worn off, but eventually it just stops dead and flies, books it in the other direction, and everybody's like, what happened? And one of them says, I think he saw Tashigi and decided to go the other way. And the other man says, like, well, I mean, she is a badass, but it's clear he's sort of like, that doesn't feel right. And then we have the moment where everybody turns around and we see that Virgo is here, and they're cheering because they think like, oh, now no problem. We're going to be on top of this because we've got another high level guy here who we admire. Of course, she understands who Virgo really is. And before she even gets a chance to like say anything, he begins to attack his own men using that finger pistol. And the dudes are all just like, yo, hold on, dude, what's going on? And one of them says, like, I'm all for punishment and everything, but your finger pistol could kill them. And I could not help but laugh because, like, it looks for all the world like those dudes are dead. The way that they're attacked and the way they go down, it really did look like they were dead. So for him to say, like, this could kill them, I was like, oh, right, right, right. Just because they look like they just got killed is not necessarily what's going on in this universe. Um, and of course, a couple people try to stop him and he takes them all down. And she tries to just yell for everybody to run, but she's not able to get the words out. It's like a nightmare. I think that a lot of us have had this sort of nightmare where you are trying so hard to scream out and you're not able to get the words out. It's the worst. It is so awful. I have kind of had this in real life as well. And not necessarily like physically unable to, but more like I was caught off guard and it froze up in the moment. We talk a lot about fight or flight, but there are four reactions to like a threat, and there's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And fawn isn't talked about a lot because I think we're only really just beginning to understand how that works. But fawn is when you sort of flatter and compliment the person threatening, trying to calm them down. You try to be like, oh, well, honey, I understand why you're mad. Let me make you a sandwich and sit down and take a load off. You've worked really hard today. And maybe if I offer you this, you won't beat our child. That kind of thing. I have come to realize much more of a freeze. I want to be a fight. I would like that. But I am somebody who has just enough doubt in my own judgment of what's happening sometimes that I won't take action immediately because my brain does the whole, I am not sure I heard that right. Or they can't have just done what it looks like they just did. And so I freeze up kind of like, what do I do? Because I might be wrong about this and I don't want to jump in and do something and then realize like I was incorrect about this all. So the freeze thing for me is something that I am sort of beginning to understand is rooted in a lack of trust in my own judgment. Weirdly, considering how opinionated I tend to be, it may not seem like that makes sense with my personality, but I'm also often really indecisive. Once I get there, I'm firm on it, but it takes me a while to get there, so it does kind of match up. And he winds up taking her down as well, and she's not like unconscious. She's on the floor of this hallway just saying to herself basically, my words were frozen in my throat. I cannot believe that I wasn't able to do anything. And I really felt for her because it is not trying, like, being able to say, okay, I do a freeze when there are threats. It's one thing to like say that, but when you actually do it and then look back, you cannot help but feel like, oh, I could have behaved differently. I fucked up. And like there to a point, maybe you could have done something differently. We can train ourselves to react differently over time. But it's not as easy as it looks in our rearview mirror. It's an instinctive lizard brain response. So I'm not mad at her. It's just more the fact that I keep feeling as if Toshigi is being portrayed a certain way because she's a woman. That's what I keep running up against with the show in general, is that women fighters really are rare. And so when we get them and then they aren't really allowed to be great, like fully, it is highly suspect to me. And I think it wouldn't be as suspect if it weren't for the fact that there were so few of them. It's the thing, where if you only have like 4% of all the fighters in your whole series be women, you better do a fucking good job with that 4%. And if you fuck up, it's going to be very noticeable because I'm hyper aware of that 4%. You can make 96% of men, you can make a bunch of them screw ups, but you've got such a high volume that you do that and you still got plenty of competent ones in the mix. And so I just have this sort of like side eye with the whole thing with Tashigi. I understand what's meant to be happening with her, and I'm not even blaming these character traits. I'm blaming the author for putting these character traits on a woman instead of on a male character, because it just feels like this is not something that we have seen with men almost ever. So anyway, that's the main thing going on with Tashigi. Um, and then we have the conversation with Zorro. Zorro has like this, he fights with the Marines and then he hears about how Luffy got beaten by Caesar. And Zorro is really upset by this in a way I wasn't expecting. Um, Usopp explains to him about the fact that this guy can manipulate gas and sucks oxygen out of the air and yada yada yada. And Zorro says, I cannot believe it. He got beaten by him. We like got the drop on us by the fucking Cool Brothers. This is pathetic. What the fuck is wrong with us? We gave up 2 years of our lives to train. Was it all for nothing? If we keep fucking up like this, we're gonna get ourselves killed. And he just stops fighting and he yells up because Luffy's like still up there. And he yells up, Hey, Luffy. Uh, I forgot. Oh yeah, because I keep thinking that Sanji is Nami, but no, they're back in their correct bodies now. But yeah, he yells up to Luffy as Sanji is saying, "What the fuck is Mosshead doing? This better be good." And all the Marines are attacking him as he's trying to get Luffy's attention, and he just like breaks their swords into pieces, basically. Um, and Luffy is running and listening as he's running. And he says, You have got to get it together. We're in the new world. Stakes are high. And basically, you know, pick it up, my guy. We're not here playing around anymore. This isn't Peanuts. And when we come back, Sanji is smiling and says just that we needed a kick in the ass. And I was really surprised because Sanji is so unsupportive of Zoro normally, but he seems genuinely pleased by Zoro's speech and seems to be like, you know what? He's fucking right though. Um, so this is when Luffy, he like jumps down on a bunch of these, I think they're the dudes in the hazmat suits, if I'm not mistaken, and he's using this ability, I think he calls it UFO. Let's see. It's like his legs are spinning under him in like a disc shape. Uh yeah, Gum Gum UFO. And then he goes and knocks all of these dudes off this like catwalk and says, "See, I got it." And Zoro says, can't you take anything seriously?" Um, so this is when a guy comes in, tells Caesar that the Straw Hat and the Navy are all inside the building. They got away from the gas and they're in Building A now. Oh, and I had forgot. I got so sidetracked talking about the fucking stuff stuck to Vergo's face that I forgot to mention that when he sees the Marines aren't out there, his immediate response is, "Oh, well, okay, then Luffy and his friends ain't in that cage." And Caesar's like, "Why not?" And Virgo says, "Because all the Navy are fucking meathead idiots. They don't know anything. They are not competent men. So if they manage to get away, it's not because they were smart enough to figure out how to get away. It is because Luffy and his friends had to have helped them." And I thought that was so funny that he like was sort of the boss of these guys and that apparently has given him the insight these dudes are not top shelf. We aren't working with geniuses here. Um so of course Caesar starts to do his whole, well, how the fuck did they get inside? um Virgo is saying like, okay, if Law is on the loose, I probably am going to have to take care of that dude myself, like if he's out there, because that's the part that I really don't like. um and Caesar tells this guy, well, you're going to have to go and like basically isolate Building A, and we are going to make sure, because I know right where they're going to be headed for, R66. We have to make sure that they don't get that far. And it bummed me out a little bit that Caesar knows precisely where they're going. I was sort of like, oh, maybe he won't be sure exactly what they're doing. And I am really, the reason that I kind of thought this was because there's no reason for them to know to go to R66 except that Law told them. So I guess that's really where Caesar's like getting his idea from here, is just, okay, if Law is working with them, then he would have shared this information. Um, so he starts like Yeah, observing all of the camera footage. How did they get inside the building? And all right, well, we're going to let that gas in. We're going to handle this. And also, this is going to make a really good example so that the people who are watching all of this finally get the show that I intended them to get. Chopper, meanwhile, is running down the hall. He's looking at that note that got thrown at him that says, I can't remember what it even says. It just says, like, don't do it or something. I'm assuming this note was Law because Law was the one who knew that their bonds weren't real sea prism stone. So probably he had like a whole plan for how this was going to go. And he saw Chopper because Law has that ability to like know what's going on in a given space. So I'm wondering if he had, because the sea stone prism wasn't real, his powers were not dampened like we all thought they were. So maybe he was aware of Chopper being there and was just like, oh, this little guy is gonna fuck things up for us and he's gonna get himself caught for no reason. So that's my going theory right now. But yeah, so let's see. What is it? I'm trying to find the exact orders that Caesar gives. He says, uh, oh yeah, here it is. We know what they're after, escape away off the island. And that means we know where they're heading. They're going to make a beeline for building R and gate 66. So I want you to isolate building A. Um, and this dude, he says, close the gate between the two buildings and then let the gas inside. Use the experimental cannon. And he keeps calling the gas Land of the Dead, which keeps confusing me a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, but I'm starting to get the hang of it that that's what he's calling this weapon, but it's just sort of weird sounding to me still. Um, and the lackey he's telling to do this says, "Well, if we do that, we're leaving our own guards to die." And he just yells at him, "You will do as I say and place a surveillance snail too. Do you hear me?" And this guy just like keeps trying to argue with him. And I was just like, man, have you not figured this out yet? He left all of those dudes outside. Like, did you not see that? Aren't you not aware? But yeah. Anyway, so that is what they're doing. Um, and oh my God, I'm trying to find the spot where Luffy is like, he's yelling at this guy who is coming at him. And this dude has these really weird, I don't know how to describe this man's the way that he is put together because he hasn't got regular animal legs, but he also it's like he has human legs, but he's got six of them. It seems like so he's got a sort of insectoid look, but they aren't insect legs. It's like they're human legs in a squat position. I don't know what's going on. Luffy just says he's freaky and smashes him out of the way. And that's pretty much it. This guy like gets a speech. He calls himself Machete. I really thought he was going to be more of something. And he isn't. Luffy just bashes him right out of the fucking way. All of this is happening, by the way, as the sirens are blaring, telling us that we're getting the door closed and isolating off this area. And it made me laugh that we're going to get this much head time. You know, the gate, we're not just going to close the doors. We are getting the 5 minute countdown before the doors close. Really should have just closed them. I don't know why we have to handle it this way, but whatever. Um, so Law is like explaining to Smoker exactly what's going on, and we have Smoker who disappears in his smoke form to sort of fly down the hallway. Later on, when Luffy is like trying to pick up the pace, he winds up going so fast that he has lit the floor on fire like a Looney Tunes character. And I found that very funny because he is so resentful of the fact that all Smoker has to do is turn into smoke. Done. You know? And he's just like, I can't do that, dude. I had to actually run. Okay. So I'm tired. Give me a second. Um, Meanwhile, all of our other friends who are still in A, they are getting a ride on Brownbeard so that they can reach there in time. Um, and the what do you call it? Dragon shows up and begins to chase them again. But it actually kind of works out because like they're needing to pick up the pace anyway. So the dragon is sort of doing them a little bit of a favor by forcing them to go faster. Uh let's see. I'm trying to jump ahead here because we have a bunch of the stuff with Tashigi. Um Oh my God, everybody talking about how tired they are and thank you for carrying us. They also were like, hey, do you have any snacks on you? This did make me laugh, actually. Um, and then the cannon going off and breaking a hole in the wall and letting the gas begin to pour in. Um, just jumping ahead here. So, okay, I'm over time, so I'm just making sure. I've talked a lot this episode about some of the beginning stuff, but the main thing that happens in the third episode that I haven't talked about is when Chopper eventually catches up with the little girl because there's only one girl who is so big that the guards can't really do anything about it, who has separated herself from the rest of the group and is trying to like get out of the building. She keeps yelling nice lady. She's trying to find Nami. And Chopper hears this little girl crying because there are three of these dudes in the hazmat suits gathered around her trying to convince her to come back inside. And of course, she is still seeing them as like monsters. So Chopper, he turns into like the biggest, not the biggest, but like other than the one where he's completely a mindless maniac, he turns into that version of himself, like the big buff triangle Dorito body guy. And I had thought he would be like approaching her size when he did this. And it's not even close, y'all. When he is up next to her, he can stand on her shoulder like a little parrot. So he doesn't get nearly as big as I imagine him getting. It's a combo of that and also that she is so much bigger than I realize, you know? But yeah, this little meetup, he just knocks all of these dudes down and then he gets the sedative needle out and he gives her an injection to calm her down. And he is like, dude, what are you even doing back in here? Like, we got you out of here. And she explains that the master came and got us and told us that we could come back with him and we could get some candy. And Chopper is like, oh, Christ. We can't let them eat the candy. There's something wrong with it. And she asks what's in it, and he just says it's just bad. He doesn't get specific about it, which I don't like. Now's not the time, you know? Um, so I'm glad at least that she's in hand with Chopper. And I've got to say, y'all, I'm not mad at the voice actor for this little girl because they're doing what they're doing. It's valid. But I have to say, her voice is absolutely piercing. It is so difficult whenever she's on screen and she's crying. When she's talking, it's less rough, but when she's crying, it's this like squealing sound that it's difficult. That's all I'm saying. I had some moments where I was like reaching for the remote to drop the sound down during her scenes because it's so piercing. Um Anyway, so last bit, let's see. I'm trying to he asks her to lead him to the biscuit room. So she's taking him over there so they can rescue these kids. And then we go back to Caesar who is looking at the scene here where uh Virgo is standing versus Sanji because Sanji heard Tashigi crying and because it's a woman's tears, it summoned him like a fucking genie out of the ether. And he like is going up against Virgo here. And Caesar is like, I fucking told this guy that I am about to let this gas in. So I don't know what the fuck he's playing at, but he had the chance to get out of here, and he's over this place just doing his own thing, putting himself in the line of fire. I am not going to help him. Open the other gate, and we're just going to let the gas in. And Monet says, "Are you sure you want me to do that with Virgo still in the hall?" And Caesar says it's his own fault. He shouldn't have gone rogue on me, which honestly I think is that makes sense to me. Like, just, well, you fucking knew. I don't know exactly. There's like a mention, the title says something about demon bamboo Virgo, and we still haven't really seen what that means. So I'm curious if Virgo has some ability that makes it so that he isn't going to be susceptible to the gas the way that Caesar thinks he's going to be. I don't know why he would have an ability that Caesar doesn't know about. That's the only thing that I'm just sort of like, they've been working together, I thought, for a bit now. So I would think Caesar would know what he's capable of. Um, so we then have Chopper and the little girl, and they close that door to get into the biscuit room where the candy is. And they put a big pipe that sort of, in between they're like these big door handles that come curving outward, and they stick the pipe in there to keep it from opening. And that is where we leave them. They're still holding the door shut against these kids who are trying to get in. When she asks what's wrong with the candy, like, what makes it bad, Chopper just says it just is, in a way that, like, I understand this is not the time to explain, but it does make him seem sort of sketchy, like he's maybe lying or something. It's just weird. um and then we have Luffy at the doorway to the lab uh with Smoker, and eventually Smoker is sick of waiting for Luffy and just like presses the button to open the door. And the end scene of this episode is Luffy stepping inside, and they have made an agreement. Luffy is going to handle Caesar, and Smoker's not going to get in his way. And meanwhile, Smoker is going to handle Virgo, and Luffy's not going to get in his way. So Luffy steps into this lab, and he just yells, "You're not getting away now, Caesar." And he just punches Caesar in like the solar plexus, and Caesar yells, and that's the end of the episode. So yeah, I'm really interested to see where we're going here. I have a lot of I'm enjoying this arc a lot. I think this is a real fun one. It's definitely a huge step up from the last one. So all right, everybody. Well, thank you all again so much for listening. I appreciate you all very, very much. And thank you, Florian, for being here, etc. And until tomorrow, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.